the most difficult part was just me in my own head. The idea of me taking a leave. Like, I'm a soldier. What do you mean take a leave of absence? That was probably the biggest thing. So I would just encourage someone, take the time, listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to your doctor, your mentor, the people who love and care about you. Take the time for you. That is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And you deserve it.
Hello, and welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to exploring the journey of authenticity in the workplace and discovering how to navigate it your way. I'm your host, Sandhya Sudhakar, and today is another episode in our Career Questions series. Now, this is going to be a two-part series where we're going to be talking about career breaks, sabbaticals, leaves of absence, taking time off to go back to school, and a lot more. And as we do it here on this podcast, we're going to be sharing stories from individuals with different intentions and different experiences, talking about why they took a break from traditional work, what they did with their time, and how it impacted them. And each person has a uniquely different perspective than the others. And so I hope if this is something that you're considering, that you take away some ideas on how to find your own inner direction on what you need, and some inspiration to make it happen. Now, later in this episode, we're going to be joined by Jai Kensey, who took a leave of absence from her corporate job to focus on her mental health. But first, we'll chat with Shobha Kansal. Shobha is a PhD candidate at the University of Cincinnati. She's a mother of two, a fitness enthusiast, and a board member for a nonprofit called Beautifully Empowered. Shobha left a thriving corporate career first to pursue a master's degree in sociology, and she's currently continuing on to the next step toward earning her PhD. Now, she returned to the corporate world in between, and in this conversation, we'll get into why she wanted to pursue an advanced degree, how she made the decision to take the leap, and how she's bringing her passion and experience as a corporate leader into her educational pursuits. Shobha, I'm excited to have you on and talk about your career breaks today.
I'm so excited to be on, Sandhya. It has been such an exciting journey to hear your podcast come to life over these past couple of years and all of the incredible people that you've had on. So truly an honor to be here.
Oh, well, I am honored to have you. We have worked together in the corporate world for a long time, and now we're both kind of, in our post-corporate era. And as your shirt says, You're also in your PhD era. So
I am.
We're going to talk about leaving traditional work. And this episode is all about all different ways of leaving traditional work, but you've done it now for the second time to go back to school. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe the first time you did it and what led up to that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you, it took a couple of years. So it took a couple of years of actually gaining the confidence to bet on myself to do it. I left in early 2017 from the first corporation that I worked for. I had an incredible experience, learned a lot, but year after year, it had been about 2 years of cycles of graduate school applications that I, at the 11th hour, would be like, I'm not going to apply. And in 2016, it really hit me. I was like, I want to be exposed to a way of thinking that's different to what I know, right? I met with the graduate school director and the director of a sociology program, which was totally different than what I thought I would first do. And so for me, it very much felt like the right next step to do that. And it absolutely was, because I was exposed to a program of just incredible scholars in the academic space. I had an incredible cohort, very, very talented individuals around me that I was constantly learning and growing from. And it was fantastic because it's in the moments of when you feel uncomfortable that you find the most growth. Right? When you say, I know nothing about this, everybody around me knows so much more about this, but you expose yourself, you become vulnerable, and then you find that moment of growth and that moment of true, just learning about yourself and, almost leaning into discomfort, which I think is really important in order to build resilience. So that was first round of, leaving corporate America. And then I found myself back in corporate America, had an incredible experience at another company. And it was a dinner that I went to, and it was a couple of moms that I've gotten close to in our community. And some of the moms that I had actually gotten close to over the past few years had no idea I was in a PhD program, all that, in a bit of a paused phase of it. But they were asking me what I was interested in researching and what I wanted to do. And it completely reignited the fire in me. And so I will say I was on a pause that was a little bit accidental since 2020. That's the last time I took my last set of exams till 2023, end of 2023, that I decided I'm going to apply for a very competitive fellowship and I'm going to see how it goes. Because at the end of the day, it's going to tell me a couple of things. It's going to tell me, like, worst case scenario, you're not cut out for this. You're going to get great feedback on this is probably not the journey you should be on. Mm-hmm. Or it's that there's potential and here's what you can do to really grow the potential of your work and be contributing in terms of your literature and the research that you're doing.
Yeah. And so I want to kind of rewind a little bit to, you had mentioned like being exposed to new ways of thinking, and there's this place for, intellectual curiosity and growing, right? Like proactively putting yourself in uncomfortable situations that like will result in growth. But it sounded like you had been like mulling over grad school for a while. And I'm curious, like at that time, what was your like end goal of looking at school even?
Yeah. For me, it really was learning something different. And I remember a friend that I had worked with at my previous employer, she said, we've gotten such a great undergraduate business training. We have been at this company where you literally get your MBA while you're there, right? You just get exposed to so much. You're, given some, really meaty challenges from day one. If I leave, I'm going to go do something different. And I loved that call to action because I'm like, that should be the way we do it, right? That we should be exposing ourselves to things that we aren't necessarily 100% sure of, because then we start being able to build what is possible, right? And for me, I've always had this proclivity towards academia. And so I wanted to also understand, is this something that I'd want to do longer term, right? Is the academic world, something that do I want to be like a tenured professor? Do I not? And so you don't know until you try it. And so what it helped me understand is I love teaching. I love being exposed to, new ways of thinking from my students, but it gives you that opportunity to try it out without it being that high stakes of a situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, doing a master's degree is pretty high stakes, but it also is, you're not making an entire career change, right? In one fell swoop. It's like, let me see if I like this environment. And
Exactly. And I was toying between the idea of an MBA and doing something within social sciences for a while. And the advice that I had been given from a lot of people who said, okay, because you have all of this business experience, going back to MBA would be, more of a, do you want to pivot completely in terms of like what you want to do in the business world? And for me, it wasn't really necessarily that. It was, all right, maybe I do need to go to this leap of faith opportunity and, really kind of think about research. And one other thing too, is that at my previous company, I'd always found myself so fascinated by psychology and shopper psychology and, consumer research and how people think and how people make decisions. And I'd always wanted to kind of pivot my career into that, but I just didn't have the experience. And so I always told myself, like, all the advice I had been given too from, people that had been in that line of work was, you need to go get some experience in how to conduct research, how to cull through research, how to really distill insights from the research. And so that was a skill gap that I had. And so if I ever really wanted to pivot back into the corporate world, I wanted that to be something that I now had on my resume as a piece of experience.
Yeah, which is like very responsible and rational way to go about this, right? Where it's like, okay, if I'm going to leave corporate, I'm going to go back to school. I'm learning if I want to continue down this path, but either way,
right,
I could take something and bring it back to this current career that I'm in, and it can get me closer to what I feel drawn to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will tell you, when I re-entered corporate America, it was during the pandemic, and that completely reoriented the way I thought about work, the way the people around me thought about work. And so it kind of drove me to start thinking about what's going to be the way that I finish this PhD, right? Where do I want to really make an impact as it relates to my research and the work that I'm going to be doing?
Yeah. So what drove going back to corporate before you now, have left to kind of fully pursue the PhD?
Yeah. So it was actually one of those things. I like the pace of corporate. So I will tell you that it starts off with liking the pace of corporate. I think there was a little bit of like a practical sense too of, being able to have the opportunities, have the ability to, go do something that, is more of like the, surefire salary. Like you have that steady income coming in.
Totally.
We were in the, life stage of wanting to buy a home. And so there were some financial considerations, and I was so excited about the job. I was so excited about the prospect of what I'd be able to offer in this space and being able to manage a team and, I love really thinking about how to solve shopper problems. And that's what this role was all about. And so it was really this opportunity that I was like, okay, I am so excited. I am so supremely excited about going and figuring out how to problem solve in this space. And then, one thing led to a next, and I found myself there for almost 4 years.
So I'm really curious about your experience of this, because I was just reading a post on LinkedIn by somebody who, to my, knowledge, I see from the outside. I don't personally know this person, but they seem like they have this great business, independent business, super successful.
Right.
And he posted yesterday about, he basically was like, I've looked at going back to full-time traditional work so many times. And here's the thing, and he has kids and all of these things, right? So he's like going through the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, having those years or months where, money is not coming in the way that you can consistently count on it. So he wrote this whole thing, and it was basically like, if you're an entrepreneur and you go back to a full-time job, that's not failure. If you stay in entrepreneurship, that's also not winning. But we hold these things kind of precious, and we all have different perceptions of what we want something to look like, right? And so what was that process for you to say, I'm going to put a hold on these academic dreams for a little bit. I'm going to take this job. It makes sense in all these different factors. If I add it all up, it's a great opportunity. It makes sense financially for my family and all of these things, right? But emotionally, how did it feel for you?
I did have feelings of, oh my gosh, I'm selling out, I'm not finishing. But for me, it was more important to follow where I needed to be at that moment. And for me, I had all of this energy, I had all of this excitement to get back into corporate, and I just needed to follow that at that moment. And I'm so glad I did, because I had incredible experiences. I had once in a lifetime opportunities and leadership programs and training programs, and being able to manage some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my career, where I always tell myself, you have to follow where you are at that moment, right? You always have your North Star and you always have the things that you want to do. But in that moment, if you're so excited about following an opportunity, just do it, right? What's the worst that can happen? You find yourself not super passionate about it. Okay, then you pivot, right? And there are always those moments, right? Those junctures, those inflection points, if you will, where you have to have questions, right? You have to ask yourself, am I moving towards what I want to move towards? And for me, one of those inflection points came at the end of last year, when I always spend one weekend day, at least a few hours undisturbed by myself doing goal setting. And one of the spend more time doing was working on my PhD. And what I had proven, and this is a very vulnerable thing that I'm sharing, is over the past 3 years before that, I was completely unsuccessful in trying to do it all, right? I thought I'd be able to, have this really intense corporate job during the day, be a rock star mom once my kids come home and, fully dedicate myself to them. And then after they go to bed, work for a few hours on my PhD. It just started becoming impossible. And
Yeah.
I was running myself into a situation where I wasn't able to fully balance it all. Right. And I know balance is what you make it, but it felt off kilter because I was staying up till midnight, trying to write, trying to research, and I wasn't really putting my best foot forward there. And then I started realizing, like, I think I'm the type of person that if I'm going to pivot, I need to just give my 100% attention to that. And so, it became this self-actualization moment of like, okay, I think it's really hard for me to balance it all in this chapter that I'm in right now. So if I want to complete my PhD with excellence, I have to give it all I've got, full-time attention. And it's good to have those moments of like self-reflection and to say, all right, I'm not able to do it all. And that doesn't make me a failure whatsoever. That just makes me more in tune to understanding my needs and understanding how I can best show up in the places that I am choosing to show up.
Well, yes, it may feel like a vulnerable thing to talk about, but like, it's very normal to like, I can't manage a corporate job that has high demands and raising a family and also like pursuing research and doing a PhD. Like, that's just not something that like anybody can do well,
Right.
And so we, of course, I'll make trade-offs to figure out like how we might want to manage it or those types of things. But it's like, that's so human and normal,
Right. Yes,
Like,
it is. I think it's, and I listened to one of your previous podcasts of, being like a recovering perfectionist. And I think some of that creeps in, right? When you want to do it all and you can't do it all and you think something's wrong with you. And then you take a step back and you lay it all out. And what you just said was so validating, right? It's when you actually lay it out, that's impossible for a lot of people to do, right? Unless you're somebody who just needs like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, which is not me. I need my sleep.
Exactly.
I need whatever sleep I can get. I just found myself like not being able to give the things that I love my full attention, my full energy.
Yeah, totally. I think, well, I've really embraced this idea of even if I have the hours in the day, do I have the mental capacity and the focus, right? And like we have a finite amount of those things. And when I started my business, I was like kind of kidding myself, right? I was just like optimistically ignorant. And I was like, yeah, well, I can do this much work. And I very quickly learned, 40 hours in a corporate job is not the same thing as 40 hours as an entrepreneur is not the same thing as 40 hours of going to school, right? And reading and writing and doing all of those things, absorbing information. It's like, you can't do that on a tired brain.
Right.
So thinking about hours, weighting them very differently, in terms of how is it possible at the end of the day? Like, I'm sleeping at midnight. I could not be reading, I don't know how you even did it for as long as you did.
Right. And it was, that was a great moment where it was like, what is the output? The output isn't even to the level that I want it to be at, but how could it be when you're giving just the end energy that you have, right? Like the reserve battery that you have, you're giving it to the thing that you want to finish, which is your PhD.
Yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that dinner that you went to, because it sounds like that was a pretty big catalyst for you to make a decision that you probably had been stewing on for a while, but for it to feel like it was time or like the trade-offs would be worth it. What was your mindset? What were you thinking? How'd you process that?
Yeah. So I brought up, what I was interested in. And what was so fascinating was there were 4 other women at that dinner, and they were just, it was like all of this incredible anecdotal data that I was getting of like, what I want to study is something that seems to really be affecting a lot of women. And it seems to be affecting them very deeply because they were able to go on and on about their experiences, how they are perceiving themselves in the workplace, how they're perceiving their longer term opportunities at their employers or not at their employers, right? If they weren't working at the time. And it was just fascinating to me because it was like, okay, this was just 5 people within my network of people that I, spend time with, like-minded women. When I started taking this to, other spaces and talking to other women with whom, I network and I speak with, it's like, okay, this is a serious issue that when we think about our society and we think about wanting to advance women in the workplace, there are some serious systemic fixes that need to occur if that's going to be the goal, right? When we think about how the pandemic truly just toppled everything over. Yeah. And we've been in this rebuilding mode, whether it's in corporate America and academia, it doesn't matter what space you're looking at. You see women that are truly just trying to figure it all out, right? And they're very high powered, capable, intelligent, motivated women. But still, it's like when you have so many systemic things that are pushing back at you, it's really hard to overcome. And so that's really where my research lives, is like, how do we think about navigating post-pandemic, right? We're now, crazy to think about it, almost half a decade out of the pandemic. And it's like, how do we reevaluate the ways in which we have structured the workplace to make it more amenable to all people?
Yeah. And so you're being pulled toward purpose. You're super energized by where this can lead and what change it can enable. And I'm wondering, what did some of the tactics, of course, you don't have to share like the inner workings of your partnership, but like,
sure,
how did the tactics play out to figure out like, okay, this is something that we're going to do. Like, how do we support it as a family? What are the challenges that we're going to come across? Like, how did everything play out in terms of that process for you?
Absolutely. So for me, it all comes down to resources, right? You think about time, you think about money, you think about energy. All these things are resources. And in order to get one, something has to give, right? Like if you want money, then you're not going to have as much time or energy. If you want to have energy, you may have to pull back on the other two, right? And so as I thought about that, it became a question of short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, right? So it's like, yes, I'm not making the steady corporate income that I was, but it was the right chapter for us as a family. So my husband, last year he started a practice. Would that have been the right time for me to pivot?
My
Probably
gosh,
not, right? Yeah,
that would have been wild. Yeah,
it would have been mayhem. That is for sure.
Yeah.
But it's really thinking about the times that one person can give versus when another person can give, and then the give and take, right? Of, all right, this is 2023 is going to be the time for him to really establish himself in his own practice. For me, 2023 was the time to be kind of the more steady earner, if you will, and then now it's like 2024. Was the time financially, we had to think about all these things, right? It's uncomfortable discussions that you have to have, but it's like, okay, can we make this work in order, again, for the short-term sacrifice, allowing for that long-term goal to come to fruition?
Yeah. And it is a process. It's not like, okay, we're just going to make the decision and everything else stays the same, right? It's like all the adjustments need to happen. Right. And I mean, I'm speaking a little bit from experience too, not in the context of what you're talking about, but like,
sure,
going back through my financials, like, what do I spend money on? What did I used to spend money on? Like, what's actually valuable to me, and like rethinking a lot of that to make this new chapter work for as long as it lasts, right?
Exactly. And I had a really wise mentor as I was, grappling with this decision. Do I take the fellowship? Do I go pursue this? She said, you may actually really enjoy the way that you're living on that, fellowship income, if you will. And, obviously it still is a dual income type of situation, but she said, you might realize you're spending money on a lot of things you don't really need to spend money on, right? So you're just becoming more conscious of yourself. And, it's easy when you don't really have to think about it to buy and buy and buy. And then you're like, wait, I had some of these house projects over the past couple of weeks that I'm like, why did I even need to buy this? right? And so just being even more mindful as a consumer yourself to being like, I don't really need to consume the way that I was, right? And I don't need to buy the way that I was. And so really kind of channeling into like an internal mindfulness too about what you need in order to, really find pockets of happiness in your life.
I think, I don't know, maybe some people would roll their eyes at this, but like I noticed that I spent a lot of money on things in my corporate life that now I'm like, I don't need to, escape my life in the same way, or I don't need to like have a new outfit for this weekend, or, whatever it is, all these things that I felt like, some of it's like dopamine hits, right? Like,
of course,
and I was not like super happy in my corporate career, right? And so I think I was filling some of those gaps with spending money because I had it, and it was like easier to come by. And now it's like, okay, do I really care about that thing? And
exactly,
what are the things that I'm willing to give up? And do I even need it?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Just going back to that place of mindfulness, right? Do you really even need it? And most times the answer is no, you really don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you need a vacation, but So as you look forward to diving into research and writing a dissertation and all these amazing things that are going to happen, what are you most excited about?
I think for me, it's just reorienting back to academia that has gotten me so energized. Like there is this, when I read research and I just get so excited and I'm like typing away and I have, all these notes. That to me is, again, just anytime I feel my brain expanding, my brain taking in something new, that to me is like such a great feeling as a person, right? Because I think we can get to these places where we feel a little bit stagnant intellectually, or we feel a little bit stagnant, in any other way, right? But now I just feel this rush of energy. And what I do think is very helpful is, creating like a schedule, because when you don't have like the schedule that you do, like typically in corporate America, where you're, meeting to meeting and you're just kind of, managing your day through that, you have this level of autonomy that's very refreshing. And you get to think, and I always think about the following day or like the following week. I do a lot of like planning out to say, okay, by the end of tomorrow, I want to have X, Y, and Z done. And then by the end of the week, I want this done. And so just staying really principled has helped me. I've always appreciated autonomy, and just being able to get that again has been really great and very, very rewarding.
I think I really enjoyed it for a while. And then I was like, this is too much autonomy. I need some structure, and you build those things in, right? And it's like ebb and flow and figure out what works for you. But I'm wondering what like this new kind of renewed energy that you have around a sense of purpose in the work that you're doing. What impact has that had on other areas of your life?
So one of the biggest impacts is I feel the sense of being able to stop when I need to stop. And I don't, just because I know I can dedicate however much time I have in the following day to it, I never feel that sense of being plugged in as much on my phone, trying to like answer emails, because quite literally in academia, there's not as many emails to answer, right? In what I'm doing. Like I know in other, in more administrative positions, and there is that level of, needing to answer to other people. But this year has been, so far, it's only been a couple of weeks of the fellowship, but what's been really welcoming is you manage yourself, right? And so you don't feel the sense of like, I'm behind on email. Whatever you're behind on is a result of what you didn't get done, right? Not of, I need to do all these other things and then get to this. So I feel more of that balance and less of that need to be on when I'm with my family. So I'm able to just kind of unplug a lot better than I've ever been able to do. So that's been a huge, huge welcome output of all of this as well.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, I'm really excited to see where you go with all of this and what you learn and how you pivot moving forward. But I just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Sandhya. And you've been a huge inspiration to me. So thank you again for having me on today. And it was a fantastic discussion.
I love how Shobha is bringing her two worlds together, taking her experience as a corporate leader and a working mother to inform what she does with her education, and using her educational path eventually to improve the workplace for parents. Now, I certainly think it makes sense to go back to school when we want to do a really huge pivot, doing something totally different than what we did before. But you can also use it to create a foundation for something that is adjacent to what you currently do. Now, Shobha's is a little bit more of a big pivot, but it's really still very tied into what she was doing currently. For me, it was much more of I need to solidify some of the things that I already know. Now, I had been a leader in the corporate world for a while, and so I understood people's systems. I understood how organizations work. And I had been a manager, but I wanted to solidify this knowledge, go deeper in some areas, and also credential what I know, including picking up some more formal coaching skills versus the managerial coaching skills that I had had before. And so this is a very real part of schooling. It's the degree or the certificate that you get, the skill that you build around that. I went a little bit of a non-traditional route, and I did a couple of different certificates instead of one formal degree. I did a certificate within a master's program. I did a certificate within an education for executives program, and the other one was for my Enneagram certification. So I call it a little bit of a choose your own adventure instead of kind of going the more traditional path. I think as Shobha shared, and it's also so important to, if you're going back to school, have a clear sense of purpose around it. Now, I don't think that that means you need to know exactly what job you want to do after you're done. I really do believe in staying open-minded about where things will lead you. But having a strong pull towards something that feels purposeful and meaningful to you can really motivate you through all the hard work that's inevitably going to come with school. So my next guest is on a very different topic. Her name is Shobha Kansal, and she is no stranger to hard work. Shobha is the CEO of Kensey Consulting, who, prior to going independent, worked for some of the largest PR firms in the world. Her resume reads like a who's who in the industry, and she specializes in, kind of doing it all and delivering end-to-end communication strategy and execution in the health industry. Now, in this conversation, you'll hear her passion for equity, and she's going to share with us some of the difficult moments that she encountered where she faced discrimination and bias in her own career, leading up to taking a leave of absence to focus on and nurture her own mental health. After years of doing it all and never asking for help, this was a moment of reckoning for her. And she shares about her struggle to accept that it's okay to take a break. Okay, welcome, Shobha. I am super grateful to have you on the episode today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about your career, but primarily talk about a career break that you took. And I honestly think this will be something that can be so helpful to so many people, because it's a really difficult topic to think about taking a leave from work. And so can you share a little bit about kind of the narrative of your career and how you've built it? What would you say you specialize in?
Yeah, so Shobha Kansal, I specialize in communications and corporate social responsibility, particularly reaching multicultural populations. I always say I was raised in agency, so I've worked for global PR firms in the US and in Australia, where I've helped build comprehensive communications campaigns for pharmaceutical companies, foundations, consumer packaged goods companies, government agencies, nonprofits. So across the board, building comprehensive communications campaigns that involved, I say it's like an umbrella, that involved traditional PR, marketing, advertising, government affairs, social media, as well as community relations, where that CSR spoke comes in. So I've done that for many, many years, like over 20 years. Feels weird to say. And then I've gone in-house, where I've worked for an international nonprofit organization doing communications and corporate social responsibility work, as well as consumer packaged goods companies in the telecom and those types of spaces.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like fun work. And I want to dive into a time that maybe was not so fun in your career leading up to when you took a career break. And so,
Yeah.
can you share a little bit about what was going on in your workplace at the time leading up to you making this decision to take some time off?
Yeah, it's funny because I have never met a Black woman that took a leave of absence. And it was, I'm a big believer in therapy and a champion for people who, a champion to, really encourage people to seek therapy, have a therapist, talk to them on a regular basis to really I saw a study really recently about how chronic stress can create other issues within our bodies and particularly Black women. And so having a therapist has been really great for me in order to really work through very stressful situations, to talk things through and to come to my own conclusion on how to to get through those situations. And so I think for me, it was very difficult for me to make the decision to take a leave of absence because I am like just suck it up, just keep going. We are strong Black woman. I'm a strong Black, you hear that? I'm a strong Black woman. We don't let people see us, in this type of way. Never let them see you sweat. My granny used to tell me that all the time. Never let them see you sweat. So the idea of taking a leave of absence was kind of like, oh, no, like I'm not doing that. That's a sign of weakness. Like I'm strong as hell. I can do this. But like nobody's going to make me take a leave of absence. But after talking with my therapist for a while and just, close friends and mentors, I'm very blessed to have really amazing mentors. I just said, you know what? Why not? Why not? It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of giving up. It was really an opportunity for me to reset and to figure out who am I? What am I doing? For me, what really led up to it and what a lot of Black women, I think, face within these corporate spaces is, that ceiling that feels like it's there when you're ready to move ahead, or that ceiling when it comes to your pay. Black women are the most underpaid demographic across the board. And so when you are feeling that in multiple, and it wasn't just one incident, there were multiple for me. And so for it to happen back to back, similar scenarios, for me, it just was a time where I said, you know what? I'm just over this. I'm over being undervalued. I'm over being, giving so much of myself. Cause I'm one of those, like you said, my sign, my air sign, and I'm a Sagittarius, I'm a fire sign. So it's but my birth chart is air, but I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm full on fire sign. So when I go into something, I'm giving it my all. Like it is, I am full force, 150%. I love hard. I work hard. I do, I just go full throttle, full on when I'm involved in something. So when you feel like you're doing all of that, giving so much of yourself, and, I'm a solo parent. So a lot of my time away from my son and 3:00, working till 3 a.m. and doing everything to just do a great job. I don't know, when you just feel like you're not rewarded for that type of effort, you just kind of get to a place where you're like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And so when I decided to take a leave, I had gotten to a place of this extreme stress. And I was listening to this podcast recently, and I wish I could remember this lady's name. And she coined it. She said, it's almost like a mental lynching, because you start to question yourself and question your capabilities and wonder, are you on the right path? And are you doing the right thing? And well, why isn't this producing what you feel like it should produce when you're doing everything that you're supposed to do and some? So for me, it was, I need to take a mental break because this is starting to weigh on me. And I feel myself getting into almost like a depression, because it's just you don't know what else to do. You're like, okay, I don't know what else to do. I'm just throwing my hands in the air now, because what else do I need to do? Give you my firstborn child? What do I need to do? And I'm totally not that person where I don't need to prove myself. I'm very confident in who I am and what I'm capable of doing. So it was just one of those like, yeah, I'm not about to beg anyone, for anything. So I just decided to take a break, and I listened to my therapist, I listened to my mentors, and it was just a great opportunity for me to just pause and restart.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit about what was going on in the workplace, but one of the things that you mentioned, and I think that a lot of absolutely Black women and women of color have this mentality of, I have to be strong, like I have to be impervious to everything and anything. I have to show up perfectly because the bar it's higher, unfortunately, for Black women to deliver far beyond many other people that are getting the same level of recognition. And I've done some work in burnout, teaching, workshops on burnout and things like that. And one of the things that has been really interesting to me is that resilience, this concept of resilience, is actually not so much about armoring up and enduring and just taking the hits day after day, but it's about recovery. Like resilience is truly about recovery.
Yeah. And I think that's where I was. I was totally burnt out, and I felt like there's nothing else that I can do. And just, who I am as a woman, I watched my grandmother, who was an incredibly strong woman, take many, many hits, and she just kept going. And so I looked at my son and I said, do I want to be an example of, do I want to show him that it's okay, that there's strength in saying, I can't do this anymore? Or, show him that there's strength in saying that right now I'm not okay. And, and him seeing that, mommy took a break because I needed to focus on my mental health. I needed to focus on restarting. And and that's part of being resilient. It's part of taking care of yourself is part of being resilient. And I feel like, when we do go into these corporate spaces, there were so many Black women that I spoke with during my time on leave. And it just pained me to hear, and women of color in general, pained me to hear all of us having the same story, all of us having similar stories. So it became hard for me in some of those instances at different companies to be there for people and carry the weight of the issues that I was going through.
Yeah.
And the community, because I'm working with the community, the issues of the community. So it was just kind of like sandwiched into the community, the people in the office space, and then me in the middle with my own issues, the same issues that I'm dealing with, the equity issues that I'm dealing with and challenges. It was kind of like, I can't take any more on, and I need to take a mental break. And you see that with a lot of activists, with a lot of these equity workers, DE&I workers, that the weight of all of that sometimes can cause extreme burnout because you're carrying the weight of your community on your back, and you're constantly going up an uphill battle, fighting for them and yourself at the same time. And so, it can definitely cause some level of burnout.
It's a lot to carry. It's a lot.
It's a lot to carry, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm always going to fight for my community no matter what, and fight for a seat at a table or make my own table, which is what I've done now. And because it's one of those things where I'm always going to speak up for people in communities of color to ensure that our voices are heard, to ensure that doors are open and tables are set for us. And it's just something that's in me. So you're never going to shut me up in that space. It's just a matter of just learning to maneuver in these spaces and still bring your true self. I don't ever want to feel like I can't be myself in certain workspaces. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. You are the person who's coming forth with the mirror to say you're bringing your true self, bringing forth all the challenges, bringing forth the lack of equity issues, and here's solutions on how to get there. So, you have to keep doing it. As heavy as it is, you have to continue to do it because, it's such important work.
It's very important. Now, when you were kind of experience along enough the stress and going through a moment where you had shared with me, like getting amazing feedback on your work, the results that you were delivering, that people love to work with you. Talk a little bit about that. And then you went to ask for opportunities and were turned down.
It's one of those things where, yeah, it is disappointing. It is disappointing when you're in those situations where you feel like, okay, I'm ticking all the boxes. What else can I do? Where you're kind of just at a loss of what else can you do in order to move ahead in certain spaces, especially when you see other people moving ahead and you wonder like, okay, well, I'm doing the exact same things. I'm showing up, I'm showing out, I'm going above and beyond. But I kind of feel like this is why I went into business for myself, because I said, nobody owes me anything. Nobody owes me anything. I owe myself the self-respect and to just go out and create something on my own. If you can't get it from one place, go get it somewhere else or go create it yourself. And so that's the mentality, if that I had to really to just dig into, because if you just sit there and focus on what they didn't give you, what they should have done, what they didn't do, yeah, it's messed up. I want to say effed up. But at the same time, knowing that you've done a great job somewhere, that's all you need to do. You don't need to say anything else. You don't need to do anything else. Just focus on what you want and move forward into that space. And whether that's creating your own or moving into another organization that'll give you what you want and what you deserve. And just keep on. I remember one time a mentor told me, I was working at a really big PR firm, and she told me, for us, if you want to move up, you got to leave. And she told me that. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, what happened to the days of, I think about my grandmother working for her company for like 40 something years. She said, nope, if you want to move up, you have to leave. And I tell that to my mentees now, like, if you're experiencing something where you feel like you are stuck in one space, that's when it's time to shake it up and move on to the next. Whoopi Goldberg just did a video recently it's all over social media, where the reporter asked her, what is it that you love about coming to work?
I saw it. Yeah.
She said, what do you love about coming to work? And she said, my paycheck, getting paid. And I love that so much, because at the end of the day, people work to take care of their families and to take care of themselves. Financial resources. People are working for resources. Yes, you like your coworkers, you love your boss, you get along with everybody, but you come there for a reason, and that's to be able to earn a living to take care of yourself and your family. So why wouldn't you want to get paid what you know you deserve? Why wouldn't you want to continue to grow so that you can continue to support your family in the way that you want to? So these things aren't, unrealistic goals and desires. Everybody wants to be able to take care of their family the way that they should be able to. But sometimes you can't do it in the place that you love and that you want it to. Sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. And sometimes these things are blessings in disguise. You never know what might come about. I mean, I've stayed in places for longer than I should have, knowing that I was underpaid, and moved on to better places. And it was like, wow, I'm so glad that, I got that experience and I got this experience. I'm so thankful for every experience that I've had. And it's helped me to become more focused on just really asking for what I want and not taking no for an answer. And it's like, if you can't give me what I want, then it's on to the next. And there's no hard feelings. This is life. This is business. Just like when we're making business deals, and it is or it isn't. This is how I am about, when it comes to my compensation and how I'm treated and valued within the workspace. There will always be another job. There will always be an opportunity for you to create a business. There is abundance around us, in us, everywhere. You will get another job. And so, it will come to you. And so it's one of those things, having that mindset has really put me in a place like, if I'm not getting what I want and I know that I deserve it and I put in hella work to get it and I'm still not getting it, then this isn't the place for me. So that's just the mentality that I have, and I'm not going to wait to see. If you've already told me there's no negotiations happening here, then I gotta go.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think sometimes when you're in a company and you've been there for a while and you've been working really hard, it's like hard to see that there's a whole world beyond that one company. And there's so many opportunities out there.
Whole world. I mean,
The whole world.
I've worked overseas multiple times.
Yeah.
I tell people, I was just telling a girlfriend the other day, I said, you don't have any kids. Go move to Europe. Go move to, like, there's thousands of jobs. There's not, this is not just it. You can go anywhere. I moved to Australia and had a job in 2.5 seconds working for the second largest PR firm in the world. So it's like, there's opportunities. It's abundance around us, within us. It's all yours. And if you want it. So there's no need to, I know people get stuck on the loyalty and we're a family and all of this, but at the end of the day, your family wouldn't watch you sit there and get underpaid, would they? Your family, so your family would want you to be paid what you're worth, wouldn't they? Yeah. So go on to the next family that'll pay you what you're supposed to.
Right. No, I mean, your company is not your family. Let's just say that.
Yeah. So I think people need to let go. I mean, yeah, of course, when you're there, loyalty in terms of, doing the job, maintaining confidentiality with work, trade secrets and whatnot and all that, obviously. But in terms of, once you feel as if it's time for you to move on or you've outgrown a situation or your life has changed in terms of like a family or a new baby or a marriage or whatever it might be, you have to reevaluate, and loyalty cannot come into the equation when it comes to your happiness and what you deserve.
Yeah. And so when you finally were able to kind of come to this conclusion that, yes, I need to take a break, I'm going to take a leave of absence, what did you ask for? Who did you talk to?
Well, I talked to my therapist first. Or in terms of who I talked to at the company when I took
in the company. Yeah.
Oh, I just let my boss know that I was taking a leave of absence. I was very shocked. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever done this leave of absence thing. And like I said, I had never met a person of color who had taken a leave of absence in my life. So it was all very brand new to me, other than like, when I took time off to have a baby, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So I talked to my boss and it was really an easy process. I just said I need to take a leave of absence. There were no questions asked. Of course, people were concerned because people automatically think like, oh, are you having surgery? Are you sick? Do you have cancer? Is this? And I don't think people really take mental health into consideration when folks take a leave of absence, because this is actually the first time I'm talking about it, because I think we, as the society that we live in here in America, it is very focused on just keep going, go, 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 be resilient, keep going, be strong, especially in our communities. It is like, keep going. No one has time for tears. No one has time to even think about emotions. Just keep going, because we have mouths to feed. And so I think I'm very grateful that I was able to take the time. But one of the things I would say that I do regret is during that time is that I think because of my upbringing and my grandmother being such a strong woman who was like working, always working, had started companies from scratch, and was like worked all the way up into her 80s. I couldn't sit still. So it was still like, focus on like, what am I going to do? And how, it was my mind was always going 100 miles per hour in addition to mothering. It was just my mind spinning of like, what am I going to do? When people were just said, this is the time you should just relax, pick up a hobby, get your mind together, meditate, do all that. I'm like, look, I can't sit. I can't sit. And it was because I take a very homeopathic, like natural. I don't take any medication. Not anything against people who do, but I go the natural route when it turns into healing, whether it be mentally or physically. And so my doctor had given me all of these natural remedies to do, and which included meditation and all of these things. And I just didn't really stick to the script because I was so focused on like, okay, what, am I going to go back into this environment? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do? Do I want to? Who am I? Where do I want to go? Where do I see myself? And so all of those things just constantly going through my mind at 100 miles per hour. I really couldn't sit still. So when I think about the time that I did take off, I really wish I had just really taken that time.
Actually taken the time to decompress.
Yeah,
and rest.
actually taking the time to decompress and to rest. And I some of it I did, but a lot of it was because it was 2 months. And so, yeah, I really wish I had taken that full 2 months to just literally sit by the lake every day and really meditate every day and to do all the things that my doctor has suggested. But, it is what it is. The most difficult part was just me in my own head. The idea of me taking a leave. Like, I'm a soldier. What do you mean take a leave of absence? Like, I can push through this. I can. I fought bigger battles than this. But yeah, no, it was me getting out of my own way. That was probably the biggest thing. So I would just encourage someone, take the time, listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to your doctor, your mentor, the people who love and care about you. Take the time for you. That is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And you deserve it. I mean, people who've been working 20 plus years and just going, that was literally the first break I had ever taken.
Yeah.
And in such a long and over a decade. And so just to think, that's what I love about my folks in Australia. They, they'll take sabbaticals and take a year off just to travel the world. And that's what I said, those are my people. That's my tribe over there. They really know how to do the self-care thing. They do it very well. And so I had to really pull on that, the memories of my time there and listening to the people I care about who were very concerned about me at that time.
So what was the impact of taking that 2 months of a leave? What happened when it ended?
Well, I started my own business.
So you didn't go back to the company at that point, or you did temporarily?
No, I didn't go back. And that was something too. I didn't know that you could leave a company after taking a leave of absence. That was new to me. Yeah. So like my friends who are attorneys and my friends who work in HR, and I'm so lucky to have all this group. I'm like, ooh, good. I got a whole Rolodex of information.
Powerful, amazing people. Yeah.
So they all gave me all the scoop of everything that I needed to know. And so it was super, it really, I think it was empowering. It was empowering for me because, like I said, I had to get past myself of like, you just keep pushing, you keep going and you fight the battles. But it was, no, you need to sit down, sis. Sit your butt down and really figure out what is next for you.
Wow, what a huge shift. It's like the experience that you described about working so hard and delivering like incredible results for your company, getting praise for everything that you were doing, and yet feeling like you were running into a wall over and over, because it wasn't getting recognized the way that you really wanted it to, with fair pay and roles and things like that. And then deciding to kind of take that control back, and the universe just like delivered. Like there's so much out there for you if you just like open that door and realize how capable you are.
And sometimes you got to promote yourself. If you're not getting what you want where you are, promote yourself. And that's in any situation, job, relationships, friendship. Promote yourself. Take it upon yourself. You are in control of yourself, and you don't wait on someone to give you something that you want. Give it to yourself.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing about your experience and how after you did open that door, amazing things happened. I appreciate you.
No, thank you for having me.
Now, Jai talked about a couple of things I really just want to highlight. She was working in an organization where she was over-delivering and yet not getting the recognition that she deserved. And it really was messing with her mind. And then she left and she had tons of opportunities landing right in front of her. And I think this point is really important. Go where you're appreciated and valued. And we can recognize that it's hard to see this while you're deep into your corporate career, especially if the place is not a great fit. We can naturally start to place so much value in how we're seen and what others think of us. I think this is even more of a rationale for taking time away from work periodically to reconnect with your inherent value as a human. And if that's not possible, can you find ways to take a step back to reflect on it while you're in your current job? This might even look like interviewing for jobs outside of your current company every once in a while to make sure that you have the perspective of what others see. Now, one of the things that Jai mentioned in the conversation was that she wishes she would have relaxed more when she had her time off. In part 2, we're going to go deep into being intentional about your time away or during your career break and really connecting to what you need and want and how to plan ahead for that. So make sure to check out episode 47. And one other topic, of course, that will inevitably come up for you as you're considering a sabbatical is money. So I'm going to link 2 articles about budgeting or planning financially for a sabbatical. One is more about how to save for time off and some of the investment tools that you can use and things like that. And the other is about what you might want to spend during your time away, especially if you're considering traveling as a part of how you want to spend your time. Takesha Harvey and I talk about that at the beginning of episode 47. So if you're feeling inspired and you want to hear more from Working Your Way guests who have taken time off and you can't wait a whole week until next week's episode, check out Antonio Garcia's episode 7, where he talks about taking time off in between jobs, and Andrew Giannetta's episode 40, where he talks about taking a leave of absence to focus on his health, manage his stress, and process the loss of his father. All right, we'll see you in the next episode.